Hi, this is Plini and you're watching the Guitar Mania channel. Amazing. Probably the best one of the tour. The first time I played in that venue was kind of a huge realization of how fun touring is, because it's the venue's a boat and it's got a fine dining restaurant upstairs, and so it's kind of like beautiful venue, great sound, great lights, and we get fed an amazing dinner. So it was, yeah, definitely a highlight. It's kind of like after doing that, I don't know how much better it can really be, because they're sort of the pinnacle of this type of music. Our whole touring party shared a bus of 17 people, so I basically lived on top of him for almost 2 months. So yeah, definitely got to know him really well as a guitarist and as just a guy. Learnt a lot. Yeah, I think we've got a lot of the same taste. At least when it comes to sort of how to approach creating music and sort of not setting limits and kind of being open to being adventurous and taking risks. I mean, if you listen to their new album, it definitely sounds like a band that doesn't really care what anyone thinks, because it's got some absolutely crazy shit in it. I try not to. I mean, I guess there's a part of my brain that's always going to think like, oh, is this too far or is this too different? But I guess that's one of my goals in making music, is to get to the point where that part of my brain doesn't exist anymore, and I could, if I wanted to, just record this train for an hour and release it if I felt that that was like a genuine creative expression. I guess music was kind of, and is, my main hobby. So anytime I had outside of studying or just like hanging out with friends, I'd be playing guitar or writing music. And I guess because I never really tried to pursue music as a full-time career, it meant that I was constantly making music that just made me happy. And I think that kind of spilled over into people liking it. And now I guess this has happened. Yeah, when I graduated the degree, I'd worked part-time in a few different offices, and I thought either I can jump into doing that 5 days a week, which is kind of not the most enjoyable thing, or try music. So I sorted out the first show, and then that turned into an Australian tour, and then that turned into some international stuff, and it just kept building and building until now. Really well. I've done, I guess, 3 headlining tours there now, and it's gotten bigger every time. Most of the cities will sell out. Crowds are really good. I guess there aren't many Australian bands in this sort of scene, but there's still a huge following for it. Like when a band like Animals goes to Australia, they get 1,000 people to a show. So there's definitely an audience there that I'm still trying to capture. Even if they didn't sort of single-handedly do it, when you think about instrumental bands that are kind of successful, there aren't many, and it's kind of Animals as leaders, Chon, Polyphia, Intervals, bands like that. But it's a very short list. I guess I've just never really felt inspired to write music with vocals. For a start, my voice sounds like absolute shit, so I would never sing. And I guess because I spent so much time figuring out what writing music is without singing, that's just sort of the direction that I ended up going in. I guess because I don't, I mean, I rarely even sing at home in the shower or anything. I don't really think of melodies in terms of being sung, but I guess that there's a voice in my head that tries to sing them to kind of decide whether or not it's catchy. Definitely it. I'll sit down, set up to record playing guitar or maybe playing keyboard like 1% of the time, and just kind of fuck around endlessly until something cool happens by accident, and then take that and develop it into something. I'm constantly plugged into an Axe FX, which is plugged into a computer, so it's always ready to record. Usually the first thing I record will be a little bit messy, so I won't keep it. But I think there are probably a few riffs where the original demo stays as the guitar part. Definitely. And I think that is kind of the single challenge or kind of exciting thing about writing music is that initial inspiration. I have no idea how it happens or where it comes from, but the process of keeping to try and find it again is what makes making music fun. But I guess inspiration comes from different experiences. So the more that I can put myself into stuff like sitting outside in Vienna next to a train, like that's going to inspire me. I think it's going to inspire my life into hopefully creating music. I was never too interested in sort of like metronome practice. I'd do it for like a minute and then get sick of it. But I guess I learnt songs by all the bands and guitarists that I like. So like Dream Theater, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai. And I guess that gave me a bit of a technical foundation. But it was never really anything rigorous, and I never had a formal teacher. I just sort of learned whatever sounded cool to me, and that just jumbles together. Sometimes I just go online and grab a tab for something, or I do it by ear, or I just play along, and even if I wasn't getting it right, if I was getting something kind of like close, that was good enough. For some reason, I've never been too drawn to being able to play other people's music perfectly, because I think they already do that. But I guess what I hope to achieve from learning other music is just to get all these different ideas from different people that I can put into my own music. I'd say definitely both of them, and I'm sure that's because I love both of their playing, and sort of it's a sound that's been in my head so many times I can't help but like it. Not sort of consciously. There's a lot of the time if I'm not feeling inspired, something I might try is to pick a different mode or a weird altered scale to try and use that to get inspired. But a lot of the time it turns out to sound more like an exercise than music. So I guess it's the process of finding a sound that I like and then figuring out what it is rather than picking a mode and trying to use it. It's more if I got to a point where I'd started writing a song and I felt like it should sound a certain way, then maybe I need to learn, because of the key I'm in, I need to learn what the Dorian mode is there or how to play a certain group of chords in that key. But it's kind of always, the focus would always be creating music and then figuring out how to, or learning how to do the stuff that's going to make that become music. I guess Steve Vai, the two songs that I learned kind of first and the most would be Tender Surrender and For the Love of God. But I guess if I had to pick a song from each of them that I think is kind of most important for me, probably Freak Show XS by Steve Vai, because it's filled with all this crazy composition, like different instruments, crazy arrangements, different time signatures. It's not just about crazy guitar playing, which is something that I always try to do. And Joe Satriani, probably the song Revelation, because I think that's kind of on the opposite end. That's a beautiful example of just playing the guitar really expressively and sort of making every note count, even with a slow melody. Definitely, John Petrucci, huge influence. And Guthrie Govan. Probably the whole Erotic Cakes album. I think that's like one of the absolute guitar album masterpieces of guitar playing. All the crazy articulation, like bends and slides that he does, is kind of something that I've never really heard anyone else do. I'm not sure about wisdom for making a living, because I guess the surest way to make a living out of music would be to play in a wedding band, I guess. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But I guess my advice would be to pursue the things that make you happy, because then, I mean, you could not necessarily make a living, but you haven't wasted your time.